Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 4, Episode 17. Also, globally, Episode 148. I am your host, Alejandro, and with me, no one today, doing another solo episode after 2 weeks in a row where my buddy Paul was able to be in the show thanks to his recent unfortunate unemployment, but he couldn't be here this week because of certain stuff he needed to do as he still manages the unemployment water, so I feel so bad for him. Because the baby's coming really soon. But he said he definitely is going to be here next week, and hopefully 2 weeks from now when we're able to celebrate our 150th episode milestone, which is so wild to think that we have hit 150 episodes in a row. Technically, it's 163 if we count the episodes that aired in 2020 that are just exist over there in YouTube that we have basically mulliganed. It's 150 episodes since we restarted the show in May 3rd or May 4th, 2021. I don't remember, but you can go check that out. But as we wait for that to happen in 2 weeks, I am gonna trudge along solo like I've been doing most of the time. But when he's officially out of commission, when he finally takes a hike into parenthood, I want to see how many I do in a row and who I end up bringing in the show. Obviously, I haven't brought in my bud Sebastian, who tends to come in. These days he's also been pretty busy, but I'll manage. It's going to be an interesting summer, but thank you everyone for tuning in to this week's episode. And just a reminder that this is the X-Bottom Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursdays from 10 a.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, what have I been playing? A little bit of everything, but I would definitely want to focus more on the recently released Stellar Blade, which came out last Friday, right a day or two before we posted in our new posting date, which is on Thursdays. I've been playing it. I think I'm 10 hours in based on like the clock that I've been reading that the PSN kind of shows you. Even though I think maybe the game also has like an actual internal clock. I'll definitely check it out. But I've been playing it. I'm still relatively early on. And one thing I will say is that it's a very good game. It's really fun to play. I really love some of the ferocity of its combat. It occupies this perfect middle spot between wanting to be a character action game, kind of like in the vein of Devil May Cry, old school, and maybe new school God of War, Bayonetta, while also having a little bit of the precision pairing of a Souls-like Sekiro, and also kind of like framing combat one-on-one with your enemies, kind of like with a lock-on, and you sometimes doing dodging, definitely executing the perfect parry, so then you eliminate their poise meter, which is not quite a meter in this game. It's kind of like some dots that are there in the enemy health, and a few of them that when you perfect parry enough, it allows you to do like a execution move that either deletes a lot of the health of the enemy or just instantly kills them. One thing that I really like about like how this combat is kind of set up is that you cannot play it fully one way or the other. You cannot just play this as a kind of like a button masher. You're gonna get killed. You cannot just play this as kind of like a Souls, like I'm gonna play this a little bit more deliberately, trying to just get those parries and dodges and kind of like go in. It feels like enemy animations are a little too slow, that playing it that way would be pretty boring. It definitely feels like a game that pushes you for hack and slash, but also to quickly react for any pairing and dodging you need to do, kind of like in perfect unison. And that gives this game its own flavor that is just not like a carbon copy of other known franchises. So at least it really has that going for it, and I really like how the combat really just gets better the more you play. And also that's kind of a little bit of my problem, that this is also one of those games that it is imperative for you to get a lot of those upgrades from the skill tree. It's a skill tree heavy game, and one of my biggest gaming pet peeves for games that shouldn't be RPGs but pretend they are is gating off a lot of the super fun stuff behind like a skill tree. To me, the best skill trees are the ones that they don't feel like they are a necessity for you to immediately have fun, but they just feel like a better power curve over just an already fun and sound combat system. And I feel that Stellar Blade kind of like misses that balance, because early on, without having any of the upgrades that can allow you to do like dash attacks when you hold triangle, maybe like increase the parry the parry window if you like, if you choose that specific upgrade. Get the perfect dodges that allow you to do like if you time it right, like a slow mo perfect dodge that then you can follow up with attacks and all of that. I feel a lot of those elements should have been like inherently part of your combat kit from the get go instead of having to unlock them, because I know a lot of people that played the demo that everyone played a month ago that had a save transfer that you can like immediately carry from like when you stopped, even though you didn't technically start when you stopped. Like the demo starts you in the final boss basically of that demo. That's kind of where it starts you if you just transition your save over. And I know a lot of people didn't bother like upgrading their character during the demo, even though they could, and they found the game to be a little lacking. And I felt that way first when I played the demo the first time, because I was like, I feel this should feel faster than it is. It looks like a game that should be faster. At the time, I was playing Rise of the Run, which at this point I kind of dropped for the moment. It just got a little too hard and repetitive for me. But that it just didn't feel quite right, or it felt more like a Souls-like that I didn't want, because I'm kind of like I just need a little bit more speed in my games right now. Like I need to be in the right mindset for a slow and deliberate Dark Souls. And without upgrades, that's kind of like how the game felt in the demo. But the second time I gave it a go, I definitely like took my time to start upgrading the skill tree that it'll allow me to do. And I was like, wow, the fun of this combat really unlocks when you start unlocking this. And that's kind of a shame that they couldn't quite get a lot of these things that, like from the get go, and then just add stuff on top of that. I feel like a game that perfectly got the balance right recently was Star Wars Jedi Survivor last year, which we're getting close. And no, actually, 3 days ago was its year anniversary. Happy year anniversary, Jedi Survivor. I love you so much. I feel that game, especially being a sequel to Fallen Order, which also a game that kind of gated a lot of its upgrades initially. Fallen Order had the perfect kind of like idea that it didn't Metroid you like a lot of the Metroidvania genre tends to do. Like Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor are kind of like Metroidvanias in that way, that they take a lot of your upgrades and then you have to like recover them. The Jedi Survivor just did the Arkham City stuff, started you with a lot of the stuff you had already, like from like the previous game, and they just build upon that. That helped that game be fun almost from the get go, and then also had a little bit of a power climb that unlocked even better moves on top of the things that already made the game fun. I feel like that's where Stellar Blade kind of misses for me, because then like when you unlock everything, like those dash attacks are so good, I tell you, so fun to like execute, and then having it when you also combine it with like the perfect dash and then do like a dash attack that then you do like a combination of triangle circle to do an even extra strong attack, and then when you even unlock other moves that you can start doing like square triangle, hold square, then press triangle, or triangle square triangle, like you're doing like actual combos. The combat of this game is so deep and fun, and it's definitely like my favorite thing about the package. On top of it being a really good looking game, especially pretty impressive for a studio in Shift Up, the Korean studio that they have mostly made mobile games, and this is their first foray into AAA. The level of polish is actually pretty commendable, that I really like. But besides that, oh, and the music, which is has the Nier Automata soundtrack guy, and that soundtrack is just so goated from Nier, and I feel like he has cooked a banger with the soundtrack. I don't know if it's my absolute favorite soundtrack for this year. That's still Rebirth for me, but I can definitely see it in the conversation. There's some really evocative tunes, especially when I've just been like exploring in this like open area, and I really vibe to that song. But I feel what lets Stellar Blade down for me, and why I say it's a good game, a very good game, but not a great game for me so far, is the fact that I just don't care about anything that's happening. I don't care about any of the characters that have been introduced. They feel a little too blank slatey or too cliche. They just don't strike me as ultra memorable characters. Obviously, the character you play, Eve, she's pretty to look at. Obviously, a lot of consternations right now online that I don't want to get into about some people like being mad that one of her suits got quote unquote censored. I don't want to like give light to those idiots. There's plenty of showy stuff that you can unlock with some of those suits. That this is definitely a game that knows that it's being eye candy. They don't hide or are ashamed of that, and they just fully like embrace it. And other than she being pretty to look at, she just definitely feels kind of like more of a doll that you're controlling. It's just such a blank slate. Like even like some of the characters that you meet, like Athena, I think it was her, or Artemis, I forget her name. That she's kind of like your tech girl that you rescue like after the prologue, and then Adam, which is kind of like the male guy that's like with you in Robot. So yes, there's two of the main characters in this thing. It's called Adam and Eve, and there's so much biblical kind of like terminology. Like the last, kind of like the last bastion of humanity here is called Zion, but with an X. But it's pronounced as Zion, so you kind of know what kind of where they're going to. So it's like this is definitely playing with with symbolism and allegorical stuff from like Bible stuff, but done in a very superficial way and not like in anything remotely deep. And a lot of the themes of what the story's playing so far with what I played, the conceit of long extinct humanity that had to go out and come back and all that, it's like it definitely feels a lot like Nier Automata or Nier Automata. I always forget how to pronounce that subtitle. That evokes so much of that game from 7 years ago, to the point that I kind of like feel like when I talk about the story of this game, is like, oh yeah, we got Nier Automata at home. So it's like hasn't done enough to like differentiate itself so far, but I'm also pretty early, and I've heard from many people that I trust that this game does kind of take a turn like halfway through. I heard someone from the LSM that I listened to, Dustin Furman. He tweeted recently that when he hit kind of like the halfway point of the game, that really like took a turn for him, and I'm hoping that happens to me, because like I really like the combat and the gameplay of this game so much that it sucks that I don't feel as connected to this game despite of that. It's not a game where the gameplay is king scenario for this game has not really like bored out for me, and I usually have had games where really strong gameplay have carried me, and in this case, like, I'm surprised the strong combat of this game hasn't been enough. But I also feel like I've been stuck in like just doing side quests and all that. I'm kind of like my OCD of like wanting to complete everything has really deflated me a little bit, and that's kind of like a me problem, and I need to shut that off from my brain of like, just try to mainline though. You don't have to try to do everything, even though some rewards that you get from the side quests, especially with the suits, it kind of makes it, but I kind of want to do it. So yeah, it's like both a positive and mixed feeling that I'm feeling about Stellar Blade, that I definitely want to keep up to it. Like, I was considering dropping it 2 days ago, because at that point it was just absolutely not clicking with me, and I was like, I'm kind of like feeling like I want to play something else other than like a Eastern sensibility third person action game right now. Especially like my feeling was like, man, it's Stellar Blade kind of paying the price for me having played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's to such a degenerate degree that I don't want to feel a game that looks slightly similar but not really, but it's kind of like in that same vibe, that I need something a little bit more counter programming to be able to enjoy it. But then like I advanced a little bit more, I was like, okay, I found something that's a little charming here. I feel I'm kind of turning the corner around with that, so I'm definitely going to try to stick to it. I told the Season Gaming people that if I finish it, I wanted to review it. I still don't know, depending on how long I take, and if I don't get distracted again, if I still want to do it. But if you want like my recommendation right now, kind of like a score, 7.5. It's kind of what it feels like. Very good, just not great. I feel like an 8 and above is like what I would call a great game. Maybe it gets there, but 10 hours in, that's kind of where I am. But there's some people that really sung this game's praises and tell how much better it gets further than where I am. So we'll definitely see, like, by this time next week, how far I go and if I've changed my tune. So that's kind of like my Stellar Blade review in progress, as you will. But other things that I kind of did my toe here and there. Like I was still playing Into the Light, Destiny 2's free event to farm a lot of those weapons. Is like I feel like I'm slowly getting back into the groove of Destiny again. Like again, that's a very dangerous for me, because when Destiny 2 is good, a lot of my backlog suffers because I just love playing Destiny. So that's kind of why I'm like, yeah, I'm glad it's good, but I'm kind of glad that it wasn't for this past year, because if Lightfall's year had been good, I don't know if I would have been able to play as many of the games that came out in that amazing year. And 2024 has just been equally strong. Like right now, a lot of people have been like, no, 2024 is like a slow year and all that. And I'm like, unless you're narrow-minded and you don't like, and your taste is so fit into a square peg and you only care about a very specific kind of game, I can imagine 2024 is slow for you, but for anyone that just loves the medium in general and likes trying different games, 2024 has just been a treasure trove, all the way from January to April. It's kind of what I've been telling someone. Is like, I feel per capita, if you compare January to April from last year to January to April from this year has definitely been significantly stronger on quantity and quality releases. But what made 2023 goated was April onward, or like late April onward, just as soon as Jedi Survivor launched. That then we got Zelda, and then Diablo, and then Final Fantasy, Street Fighter. We eventually got to Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3, and that's just me talking about like the big leagues. There was so much that happened in that period of time that was like one of the greatest gaming stretches that I've ever experienced with in gaming in years. That I feel that streak has continued this year so far, but with a little bit more variety and more exciting, because it's like, if there's something that I like putting like an asterisk in 2023, is that what made it exciting is that a lot of, almost 90% of the releases of that year were like long-awaited sequels to established long-term franchises, and that can be really fun. But I've noticed that I am also very excited when things can surprise me, and I feel like I've been more surprised this year than most, to the point where even though Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, my most anticipated game of the year, lived up to the hype and right now is my current game of the year, I'm still going through 2024 hoping for something that could surpass it. As much as I love Rebirth, I just love coming into a year and my most anticipated thing for the year not being the best thing of the year, because it's like, that's just meeting expectations. And it, to me, is like, Rebirth met and surpassed expectations, how much I love that game. But I also would love something surprising that I didn't expect for me to champion as much as I've been championing Rebirth too. So, and also a lot of people don't feel as strongly about Rebirth like I did. I know Paul eventually turned around on it, and he loves it overall now. But like, we heard how he felt early on, and that also kind of like, it's so funny when I think about what changed his opinion was when he finally got chance to really devour a lot of that game. That's when that game really sunk in for me, and that was not a problem for me. I kept playing that game just for hours. And how I know Stellar Blade, I'm not enjoying it as much as that. I feel like after 1 or 2 hours, I just want to play something else. And with Rebirth, I could go for 6 in a row, and feel like that didn't feel like 6 hours. Like, this game is just so captivating. I don't know why it's like so captivating for my mind and my soul. And maybe that's kind of where I am right now. I'm kind of now feeling the post Rebirth kind of like rebound, and that's gonna be hard for me. But I definitely want to be more open minded about that, and I just hoping for whatever else happens for the rest of this year, especially now that we're in May. I'm recording this on May 1st. I cannot believe the new month has started. This is supposed to be the month where Sony will do another PlayStation showcase, apparently. It wouldn't surprise me, because that's when they did their last one, the one that was so disappointing last year. But with that under their belt, if they can get at least some sort of like cadence going, where we're not always going into any year wondering if they're even gonna be doing one, because they're just that kind of company that's become so unpredictable compared to Xbox, that has become so predictable when they're gonna talk. Like, I'm gonna talk about when their next showcase is. They just recently announced that. I want to know, like, with this coming showcases, what's gonna be the thing that I'm gonna be eating for the rest of the year. The first 4 months have been phenomenal. Will the rest of the year measure up? Like, are we gonna fill it up, or is this gonna be one of those that, oh yeah, the first 4 months like we're so jam packed, and then the rest of the year is just kind of gonna coast by, kind of like 2022 almost. But definitely we'll see. I definitely enjoyed 2024 more than I did 2022. To me, 2022 is probably the worst year of this generation, even though that year gave us Elden Ring. But that game just subsumed so much of the conversation, and then there was just so many yawning gaps, months of nothing, until like its final 2 months. Even though when the games did hit in 2022 were like actual bangers, but you can like summarize 2022 as Elden Ring versus God of War Ragnarok. So that's why I don't think 2022 is like a good year, like in particular because of that. I like the games, some of the games that came out that year, but I don't think it was a good year compared to what 2023 was. That was just quality and quantity like personified. So, and so far 2024 has given me both quality and quantity and variety on top of it. So I want that to continue, but we'll see. Definitely May is gonna be like a slower month for me, and even for reviews. Like if I end up reviewing Stellar Blade, I know I will not be reviewing Hellblade 2. That's because it's an Xbox game. At least for Season Gaming, I have more bigger Xbox fans in that staff that are definitely gonna take a crack for it. I think my EIC is gonna review that one. Even though he wanted to review Starfield, he ended up not doing it because he didn't finish it. But I did. I could have done that review. But I'm glad I didn't, because I would have been really negative when it came out. Nothing much for me like in the review sense. So I think this is gonna be like a good month for me to maybe catch up on continuing Rise of the Ronin. I did buy Banisher Ghosts of New Eden. I heard that's not too long. I could try that. I could try also catching up on Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, even though part of my brain is like, do the first Like a Dragon first. Because so many Yakuza fans have been telling me, yeah, do that one first before doing like Infinite Wealth. Even though Rick Ho, who I mentioned a couple times here in the show, he did jump immediately to Infinite Wealth without really finishing Like a Dragon. He really enjoyed it. In fact, he enjoyed that more than Rebirth. So I don't know who to believe. So we'll see. It feels like May is going to be that kind of month for me, where it's like, okay, unlike last year that it was like such a banger, this may be like more of a quiet one, but Showcase season's coming soon, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the year is gonna give us. Enough of what I've been playing. It's time to talk about some news. There's quite a few. Even like just looking at the headlines and the news that I'm gonna talk about is like the move to recording this on Wednesdays is not gonna hurt the content at all. So press X for some news. Starting the news cycle with a kind of predictable but also kind of sad headline, because it's like, it just feels like this is always the case with Square Enix, because you never know what is successful for them or what it's not. But here's where they are, because we're kind of like in the financial, they're kind of like giving their financials now to like their investors and all that. So story by Wesley LeBlanc over at Game Informer. Story number 1: Square Enix has seemingly canceled some games in an effort to be more selective and focused. Square Enix, the company behind last year's Final Fantasy XVI and this year's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, has seemingly cancelled some in-development games, taking on some big losses as a result. As for why, the company is aiming to be more selective about its projects moving forward. This news comes from a release related to Square Enix's holdings, which explains the company is incurring losses of 22.1 billion yen, or roughly $140 million, on its financial books for the fiscal year that ended in March. At the meeting convened on March 7, 2024, the board of directors of Square Enix Holdings voted, in light of the myriad changes underway in the environment surrounding its group, like basically parenthesis, getting a new CEO and appointing a new head producers from like some of their bigger games, to revise the group's approach of the development of high-definition HD games with the intention of being more selective and focused in the allocation of development resources. The release reads, as a result of a close examination, the company expects to recognize approximately 22.1 billion yen in content abandonment losses on its books for the fiscal year ended March 2024. While potentially canceled games might sound doom and gloom, it sounds more like Square Enix is sharpening its development focus to ensure that the games it releases are hits, or at the very least financially successful for the company. Nonetheless, it sounds like roughly $140 million of games in development have been canceled, and it's unlikely we'll ever find out what they are. So this doesn't surprise me, because like one of the weird things about Square Enix is that they put out so many games, so many freaking games. In fact, like no one was ever gonna forget that period of 2022 and 2023 where they basically shitted out so many games, almost on top of each other, almost of similar genres, that no surprise, not everyone was gonna buy them. I don't know why they were thinking with that kind of like shotgun approach of just trying to do so much. Well, I personally appreciate it from the creative side that they try to do so many different quirky little games, because that's kind of what I want from companies. I don't just want them to just focus on like the big budget stuff, because if that happens, then it means like we may go many years in between releases. So like think about like a Diafield Chronicles, Valkyrie Elysium, Harvestella, Tactics Ogre Reborn, Octopath Traveler 2, Triangle Strategy, the list goes on. It's like Infinity Strash. It's like they just like release so many stuff that, of course, a lot of that stuff just wasn't gonna sell, especially because they couldn't like afford the marketing to be able to put out like for example, they have an RPG series called Saga, one, I think it's Saga Emerald Beyond is the latest entry in the series that came out last week, almost to no fanfare. It's like they have so, I feel like they put so much stuff in development and try to put it out in the market, but they only have enough marketing to do select games, and that's why like they have been losing a lot of money. That I feel maybe they still had a bunch of those games, and now that's kind of with this restructuring, they're like, yeah, we gotta like really pare this down. But my only worry is, even as someone that loved Final Fantasy 16 and adores Rebirth, I don't want Square Enix to just be that. Like, that would make the company a little too boring and a little too like risk averse. I would hope that they would still like take value in something like the 2D HDs, like Octopath Traveler and Octopath Traveler 2, or even the Star Ocean like HD 2D thing they did. They also popped out last year. That I wouldn't want them to just lose a lot of like the creative spark that I've been seeing from Square Enix, because Square Enix has definitely, at least from output alone, this has been the best output we've seen from the company in like 10 years. Because the mid 2010s were so bad for him, especially compared to the 2000s to the 2010, that if it feels like they recovered a little bit of something, and at least in the Final Fantasy side, they've just been so on fire since once they moved on from Final Fantasy 15 and into Remake. And then everything that has come out from 2020 to 2024 has just been like an amazing buffet of Final Fantasy. And a different kind of Final Fantasy for everyone to enjoy. That I wouldn't want that just to be that for them. I know that Kingdom Hearts 4 is still coming. I think there was a rumor, especially with the announced movie, that supposedly today was rumored to be a mix of CG and live action, which I know poor Brad Ellis over at LSM, who's a big Kingdom Hearts fan, that's kind of like a big no-no. He wanted it to be all animated. It's like, at least I know they have that going in, but I'm just wondering, like, what were the kind of things that got canned? I know that there have been a lot of rumors of a Final Fantasy IX remake. Obviously, you can play the PC version of Final Fantasy IX right now on all systems, on Switch, PS4, and Xbox. But they were kind of doing kind of like a more visual remake of that game. But I don't know if that hit a casualty. Who knows? But I just hope that I can't wait for them to finally say how much Rebirth sold. I know that right now at a NPD/Circana, Rebirth, it's like the 4th best-selling game of the year, which above them is Dragon's Dogma 2, Helldivers 2, and Call of Duty, which all multi-platform games. So it's been the number 4 best-selling game. Is still pretty good for the US. But the fact that they have not said any sales figures about this game, like, at all, other than us finding out like how the game charted in some territories, and the only rock solid numbers we have are the Japanese numbers that are like about 300,000 copies sold, which is like half of what Remake did in PS4. It's just something that I'm just curious to see, like, what are they waiting on? Are they happy with the sales? Are they disappointed? Like, or are they gonna spin that? I'm definitely curious to see how that happens for them. So, okay. Let me just here, do a little bit of a. So yeah, so that's Square Enix. Always a frustrating company to love, because it's like, it always seems like they are doing so well at times, and then it's like, why are you say that you're doing so bad? Like, and the financial side of Square Enix is always so frustrating, because it's like, let's not forget, especially when they were more in the Western market, there was a, how can I say this? They were always so disappointed how all their Western games always did. They were always been beneath expectations. And I'm like, what were your expectations? Like, seriously. So now we move to story number 2. Now over the Remedy side. Story by Marcus Stewart over at Game Informer. Remedy shares development updates for Control 2, Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake, and Codename Condor. Remedy has provided updates on its portfolio of upcoming titles via quarterly business review. In addition to painting the overall financial health of the studio, the report shares details on the current development state of Control 2, Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake, the Control multiplayer spin-off of Codename Condor, and more. According to the report, the Control 2 team is focused on finalizing the proof of concept stage in which the game world, game mechanics, and visual targets are proven. The project is expected to move into the production readiness stage in Q2 of this year. Control 2 was first announced in 2022. Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake, first announced also in 2022 as a rebuild version that combines both games into a single title, remains in the production readiness stage as first announced last October. However, the game is expected to enter full production in Q2 2024, so maybe next month. We're kind of like in Q2. Codename Condor has entered full production. Remedy describes its core loop as engaging and that the game brings a unique Remedy angle to the genre. Codename Kestrel, Remedy's other multiplayer title, described as a premium game with a strong cooperative multiplayer component, remains in the concept stage. Remedy also shares that Alan Wake 2 has sold 1.3 million units as of early February, recouping a significant chunk of its development and marketing expenses in the process. The development team continues to work on its upcoming expansions, Night Springs and Lake House. Following Remedy's acquisition of the rights to Control from publisher 505 Games in February, the studio is now free to do what it wants with the IP. CEO Tara Vertala states, "We're currently weighing self-publishing and related business models. Simultaneously, we're actively looking into different publishing models and evaluating potential partners." Remedy also expects to have 2 projects in full production simultaneously, stating, "We are confident that the good progress at the beginning of the year carries over to the full production stages." So, obviously, Alan Wake 2, massive critical darling last year. Obviously, maybe not a huge seller, but it was kind of like an art house, the kind of art house darling that won a lot of awards. That was my personal second favorite game of last year, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Maybe it was 4th. I could be mistaken. It's been a while since I did my top 10, but I really adore it. It was one of the few games I did give a 10 just based on the historic moniker of Season Gaming's website, what that meant. I personally wouldn't have given it outside of like it being called historic, but I felt that that game, despite its flaws, felt like such a new benchmark of what I want out of like a third-person action adventure game that mixes different mediums together in such a unique way. That's kind of why I gave it that 10 from Season Gaming. Even though I recognize that game's not perfect, some parts are really hard. But yeah, I'm like, Remedy's on fire, and hearing that they're getting close to starting like kind of like what they were saying, it was like Control 2 is moving into the production readiness stage for Q2. That means that maybe by next year we may know. That what I found fun is that are they trying to do something different with Control 2? Like, you have the concept of Control 1, so, or are they really gonna go the Alan Wake 1 to Alan Wake 2 completely like different feel of game? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that worked out well for Alan Wake 2 because like going from the actiony first game to the more survival horror tinged psychological nightmare that was the second game, I mean, that worked really well for them. So we'll see. Like, I want to see how far they take that, how soon we also get the Max Payne 1 and 2 remake, especially because you can play Max Payne 1 on PS4, 5, and Xbox backwards compatibility right now, like that original game. I actually finished it recently, and I still have Max Payne 2 installed. You can play through the original versions of this game like right now. Max Payne 2 is only on Xbox backwards compatibility, so I want to see how they redo a lot of that story, or how they say that they want to like mix Max Payne 1 and 2 like it's into a full game. So I just want to see how some places kind of like the Ragnarok like club that has all these satanic imagery there, like it's done in the remake, especially with the high fidelity of like the Northlight engine that they have. Yeah, Remedy's so cool. Like I love Remedy, and I'm glad that they are still trucking along. They found a way to like do this kind of game at reasonable budgets. So, story number 3. Now we move to Rumorville. Now over at VGC's Tom Ivan. Switch 2 reportedly has magnetic Joy-Cons, might not support existing ones. Long-running Spanish video game website Vandal claims to have received information about the console from sources at peripheral manufacturers. According to the site, Switch 2's Joy-Con controllers will attach to the console magnetically. As current Joy-Cons connect to Switch using a rail system, which is kind of like why you like insert them from above, it's unclear if they'll be forwards compatible with the new console. The existing Nintendo Switch Pro controller will work with Switch 2, it's claimed. It's worth noting that prior to Switch OLED's reveal in 2021, Vandal accurately reported on some of the console's features, such as the inclusion of a new stand and an Ethernet port. BGC reported in February that Nintendo had internally delayed the launch of its next-gen console from this year to early 2025. One publishing source suggested the delay was so they could prepare a stronger first-party software for the console, while others have claimed the move was to avoid potential hardware supply issues. BGC also reported last summer that development kits for Switch 2 were in the hands of key partner studios. Two sources BGC spoke to at the time suggested the console could launch with an LCD screen instead of the more premium OLED, in order to bring down costs, especially considering increased storage needed for higher fidelity games. So, it would suck for the people that really bought a lot of Joy-Cons if these ones are not forward compatible with the Switch, especially like if they really are like magnetic, like magnetically put into the console instead of like the slide up and down how you do it right now. But I'm kind of glad that we're slowly getting more and more information about what's supposed to happen for the Switch. Like I read from somewhere else, it wasn't here, that it will be backwards compatible, and that makes me so happy because it's like it means that then I can get rid of my old one and probably get this one and still have all my library there plus whatever else they have. And the fact that I do have two Pro controllers, I have a Mario themed one and the basic black one that they sold. I'm glad those two could be also forward compatible because it means that yay, I get to see more Mario controllers. So maybe their solution for the Switch Joy-Cons will be like putting them like in that makeshift controller that they gave you and then play it through it Bluetooth. Maybe that's the way to make those Joy-Cons forward compatible, but we'll see. The thing is that Joy-Cons are so damn expensive. I've never bought a new set of Joy-Cons. I still have the ones that came with my system. Is because I was like, this is way too expensive and I don't play my Switch that much to justify spending that kind of money. But I did buy a bunch of the accessories. I do have the controller that it's bigger than the one that they give you to put the Joy-Cons in to make it like a traditional controller, that's slightly bigger and better for my hands, and you can kind of charge with a cable there. So I did buy a bunch of those accessories. So, and I did buy the 8-bit DO, I think that's what it was called, which is kind of like the USB to try to connect other kinds of controllers into the system. So that's kind of how I may do it instead of buying $90 Joy-Cons. So I did want to repair my right Joy-Con that was developing stick drift. There was a store here where I live, like 20 minutes away, that did that for me for $20. So those guys rule. So can't wait to hear more information about Switch 2, especially because this is gonna, after Paper Mario this month and Luigi's Mansion 2 next month, like we have to hear the ways Nintendo will try to keep filling up this year that was supposed to be a console launch year for them, but they pushed for next year. Exciting times for Nintendo, even though this could be considered slow times for them from the big games. There's still a bunch of stuff that they have released. Even though that Echo the Dolphin game that comes out tomorrow, apparently, which is a port of the Wii game, is pretty bad. So, story number 4. Now we're moving into a block that I like to call the Xbox block now, because of course, when it comes to Microsoft, a lot of their information kind of like just comes blasting at once. So, also a story by Tom Ivan. Microsoft CEO committed to meeting players where they are after Xbox games dominate PlayStation Store. While it already has strong football and rival platforms thanks to perennial bestsellers Call of Duty and Minecraft, Xbox recently announced plans to bring more first-party games to PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, which started with Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, and Grounded, which are all out now. All those 4 games are finally out. And during Microsoft's third quarter earnings call on Thursday, CEO Satya Nadella said Xbox games have been performing strongly on the PlayStation Store. Earlier this month, we had 7 games among the top 25 of the PlayStation Store, more than any other publisher, he said. Nadella appeared to be referencing a recent report from Tweaktown, which found that Xbox had more first-party games among the PlayStation Store's 25 best-selling titles than Sony did. On PS5 on April 18, these were Modern Warfare 3 at number 2, Overwatch 2 at number 7, Sea of Thieves at number 12, Fallout 4, which recently got its next-gen patch and got propped up because of the show, at number 16, Minecraft at number 19, Fallout 76 at number 20, which, by the way, like I forgot to mention that in the things that I've been playing. I've been like playing that with IGN's Travis Northup, who is gonna do the re-review for that game for IGN. And Fallout 76, much better game now than it was at launch. That game has just continued to improve. It's not a trash fire. There's something good about it. And in parentheses, and Grounded at number 23. In comparison, 5 Sony published games made the list. They were MLB The Show, Destiny 2, and a trio of titles developed by third-party studios but published by them in Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, and Rise of the Ronin. It's worth noting the PlayStation Store rankings are updated daily and based on region. We're committed to meeting players where they are by bringing great games to more people and more devices, Nadella said on Thursday. Activision Blizzard helped drive Microsoft's gaming division to a record third quarter, despite a significant decline in Xbox hardware sales. So, why I wanted to talk about kind of like this news is that for everyone wondering if only those 4 games were going to be the things that they were bringing over to PlayStation outside kind of like the Xbox ecosystem, it seems that experiment worked out really well for them because they're basically subsuming and also monopolizing kind of like who's dominating the top 25 sales chart of their rival competitor. And people are buying these games where if they were over on Xbox, they could all play for free on Game Pass. That's how strong it is that a lot of people just don't want to move. And over on PlayStation side, people are not trained to wait for a game to show up on a subscription service. Like Sony has not worked like that. In fact, can you believe that we're gonna get to 2 years now in 2024, and God of War Ragnarok is still not on PS Extra or Premium? Like, I know that there were like the news that Horizon Forbidden West being put in that service too early really cannibalized the potentials of that of the sales of that game. So I feel like they're just gonna be more selective of when they put those games in a subscription service. They're more back catalog stuff or indie stuff, like kind of like the small stuff like Tales of Gonzero and Day the Diver that I didn't talk about because I did buy and install them. I just haven't played them yet because I was playing Stellar Blade. What Satya Nadella mentions is like in his regime in Microsoft, like Windows has showed up everywhere. Like even they have given the Windows OS to tablet-like competitors, even though they sell their own tablet in Surface. It's like Satya Nadella really doesn't care about keeping everyone in their own house, like and with their own hardware system. He likes his stuff being everywhere, and it feels like that mantra is going to start winning out more with Microsoft, and I believe we're going to start seeing more stuff, maybe older stuff, but more stuff kind of migrate over to other systems, because it's like whether they like it or not, it's like they're putting it in places where people do buy the games. And a lot of people over in the Xbox side, I know there's many people that still buy their games, but it's like that's such a significantly smaller number now, and everyone's just trained Game Pass, which, hey, Game Pass is an amazing value, an amazing deal. I love paying for it month to month, especially because there's been a couple indies that they have been dropping there, like Another Crab's Treasure, and recently, yesterday, Have a Nice Death, which was one of Sebastian's big championing games from last year that was just on PC and Switch, if I remember correctly. So it's like the value of that thing pays for itself, for me at least, but it's also like I do feel that it's like I do like buying stuff on PlayStation. I'm just used to buying that in that ecosystem, giving them my money like that. And over on Xbox, it's like I do once in a while throw my purchasing stuff to, especially to some backwards compatible stuff that sometimes is like on a deep enough sale that I'm like, yeah, I'll get you here. So it's like they're seeing the results. It's like they get to have their cake and eat it too. The people that don't want to, that love the Xbox ecosystem and don't want to buy stuff, they can be there for Game Pass. But then some of these games that can thrive and make the communities grow larger, they can show up in other systems and help grow, because it's like people are entrenched there and people are seemingly excited for these games. It's like it's just such a funny dichotomy where they find themselves in, and what a weird generation we're in now, because it's like I know Xbox said that they're committing for new hardware. I know there's rumors that they want to do the Xbox handheld. That would be really cool if they get a handheld as powerful, at least as the Series S, because that means that they're already developing the SKU for the Series S, and that could run in a handheld if they get to do that. And they want to keep still doing the stuff traditionally, but they also want to be everywhere. So it's like Microsoft is playing like a really interesting gamut that I can't wait to see them continue to develop, because I still want them to be like a strong competitor against PlayStation and Nintendo, which can get overly complacent and kind of like non-innovative in comparison when they're like at such ivory towers where they are. Staying on Xbox related news, this is a story by Jordan Middler. This was a video that was popped up today explaining what's coming, and very exciting stuff indeed, especially for this game that I had a very complicated relationship with. Story number 5. Starfield's next update includes 60 FPS mode for Xbox Series X, detailed surface maps, and more. Bethesda has detailed the next Starfield update, which includes improved surface maps and new performance options, among other features. Update 1.11.33, which is available now in Steam beta ahead of its general release on May 15, includes detailed surface maps, something fans have requested since the release of the game. These maps show every piece of geometry in an area, including remote locations rather than just large cities. Players can now also see markers for important locations in large cities, such as shops, mission locations, and more. And extreme difficulty has also been introduced, which will be now the game's highest difficulty setting. Players can now customize the interior of their ships similar to the way that players could already customize their homesteads. This includes changing the position of furniture and other decorative systems. The update will also change the game's performance mode on Xbox Series X. The performance mode will now target 60 FPS, and for users with a VRR display, a 40 FPS option will be available. You can now choose between 30, 40, 60, or an uncapped frame rate on VRR displays, Bethesda said. If you do not have a VRR display running 120Hz, you will still be able to select from 30 or 60 frames per second. Screen tearing may occur at times when selecting 60 in a non-VRR display. And you can now prioritize between visuals and performance while trying to maintain the frame rate target. If you're choosing a frame rate target of 60 or above, we recommend changing this to performance. Prioritizing visuals keeps the highest resolution while maintaining full detail for special effects, lighting, and crowds. Prioritizing performance lowers internal resolution and detail for special effects, lighting, and crowds. Both modes may adjust internal resolution dynamically when scenes or action get heavier as well. When switching between modes, you will see the lighting change briefly as the system catches up to the new mode. At the end of the video, of the update video, it was also confirmed that Bethesda is working on the game's first land vehicle. So, Starfield, the community has been in calamity for the last few months because Bethesda had not said squat about how they were going to try to build upon this game, and some of the updates that they were putting in, kind of like new faces for the photo mode, or you're able to eat the food immediately from the world instead of having to put it in your inventory first to eat it. We're like, why are you like focusing on such tiny minute details when there's like so much quality of life stuff that should be put into this game that was not there at launch, and we want to know when the next expansion's coming soon. This week has been like a vanguard from, at least for people that have been wanting information from them, because on top of Todd Howard going over Kind of Funny and having an interview with Kind of Funny's Greg Miller where he mentioned that this update was coming, the next day from that a day or two after that interview, now we got this video that it's adding all this quality of life stuff, which this wasn't even included in the story, but I got to read a bunch of it. It's like they're eliminating, or not quite eliminating, but they're like enabling a toggle for you to have more inventory space, and also an ability for you to access your ship's kind of like containment unit from everywhere you are. You don't have to be like close to it, which Bethesda, one of my biggest sticking points of playing a Bethesda game is the over encumbrance. They make their games so interactable, you can grab so much stuff, but it's like that comes with the caveat that then you encumbrance yourself a lot, and then it's like you have to drop some stuff, or it affects your ability to move, to sprint, things like that. That with Starfield in particular, I felt the encumbrance was a little too severe compared to something like Fallout 4 even, which you could even manage it by wearing the power armor a little bit, but it's still like, I know a lot of people love like modding the game to give them so much like encumbrance space before they would become encumbered, and I'm glad that instead of it being a mod, they're like baking that into the game. And I really want to see how this game looks at 60 FPS, because when I was playing Starfield last year, and I was playing it on Series S, obviously at 1440p 30 frames per second, I felt that game looked surprisingly good considering it's a Bethesda game, and it was surprisingly stable for the majority of its run before it started collapsing in its final hours for me. But at least when it comes to the frame rate, unless you were like in that kind of like deserty area where you find Sam Coe, I got to test it again today on Series X, because I did get it, like how I mentioned, I bought a Series X for Christmas this past December, because it was relatively cheap. For $350 I was gonna buy it. And the game looks really sharp, and I put it on today, and because I had been testing Fallout 4, the next gen patch that they dropped recently, and I'm like, yeah, Fallout 4 still has a charm to it, but visually, like, people underestimate how much of a leap Starfield was visually to Fallout 4. I got to like appreciate a little bit more, and I want to see how that now translates for them finally allowing a 60 FPS mode, which is so wild to me that this is the second time it's happened to an Xbox first party game like within the last few years. Like Redfall also launched with 30 FPS, and then 60 FPS was patched later, and I'm like, are the dev toolkits that hard for Xbox that they can launch with a performance mode from the beginning? Or they're not as like nonchalant as Sony that is like just include a performance mode regardless of what it does, kind of like what happened with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that its performance mode was so significantly blurrier than the 4K mode, even though it was like it performed relatively well, especially compared to Final Fantasy 16 that's more erratic in its performance mode. It feels like over in the Sony side they just include the performance mode just to say that they have it, but they don't care if it's like a good performance mode. And with Xbox, they just work extra hard to try to get the performance mode to at least work well. Because I know that at least for Redfall, when I went back to it for Halloween time, around the time that they put out the patch, the 60 frames mode worked well for that game. The game was still bad, but it worked well. So it's like, okay, at least they put extra work. So it's like, is it kind of like a QA thing? Is it like, damn, the time that they're releasing this game is still not when they're fully cooked? But Starfield makes it interesting, especially because there was so much quality of life missing from that game, like the lack of maps on top of the encumbrance and the constant loading that happens everywhere, that after a while it started grating on you. That's kind of why the spell for that game really broke for me when I was like really enjoying it. It's so funny, this happened when I was like I love once in a while going through the chat log of the conversation I have with Paul and my buddy Zach in our group chat, and especially if we have it in Messenger, and there's a search button where you can like search terms and look stuff that you have said before, and how much my tone changed from this game when I played it on its early access on May 1st to when I beat it. I mean, May 1st, on September 1st. As I thought May 1st because today is May 1st when I'm like, when I'm recording this. That going from that to when I beat the game 2 days after my great grandma passed away, that I do feel that the timing could have been worse for Starfield in that regard, because I was getting close to the 100-hour mark around that time. The game was like giving me more loading times, so I had to like restart the system more often. I was mainlining the story, and the main story of that game is just not that strong. It's like selling our bud Sebastian, because to him the story is atrocious. I wouldn't call it atrocious because there's good moments in it, but I would call it disappointingly uneventful, because it's just the gateway for you to get to the New Game Plus for that game that starts you on loops, on a multiversal loop that starts changing interesting stuff from the game every time that you kind of like do like a restart from New Game Plus. And that's kind of like where the power of the storytelling of that game kind of is, because they build the game towards the people that love replaying, but it meant like the way there is just not super compelling, and the compelling stuff wasn't the side stuff, because I had already done a bunch of the side stuff that was good when I had to put it through its paces of its main quest, and then the game becoming more unstable, and then my state of mind of where my state of mind was with my great grandma passing, when the game was kind of like taking a downturn in quality, it made me feel more negative about that game, like leaving it, than I really was. And obviously, like, I do stand on that being one of the bigger disappointments of 2023, in that I don't think it's a bad game. I will push back hard for that. It's definitely a game that the people that gave it 7s, they're kind of right on the money in a way. But it's like, it's a good game that is lacking a lot of stuff that was there for Bethesda before, and a lot of quality of life. So this patch that was announced, it's like getting close to remedying a bunch of that I can't wait to actually go back and play a bunch of the side stuff that I didn't do. I didn't do the Vanguard loyalty quest. I think that was the last one I left, because at that point I was like, I think I've done enough of this game. But that way, because I have a save post New Game Plus and a save right before that you can kind of like just and neglect going forward with the New Game Plus, because it was like, if you do that, you lost everything. So I was like, I want to kind of like complete a bunch of my quests with all the stuff that I built before I lose everything in like New Game Plus. So I feel this is fortuitous because it's like I definitely want to try to see how much they sacrifice visually for this to run at 60 FPS or how stable or unstable it can be. I know, like, kind of like I mentioned, me popping it recently while still running at 30, it's not. I don't think it's bad looking at all. Like I don't. So it's like it has this like old school charm to it, and it's and it's in its art style that I'm like, yes, like we'll see. Like maybe I will stick playing it in 30 FPS mode because for the most part it's like pretty stable and it feels nice on the controller. But I know that there's a lot of people are so 60 FPS elitist that now this mode at least is gonna be there for them. But I think I definitely want to hear from the people that have VRR TVs that run at 120 hertz because playing this thing at 40 FPS, it will allow them to have a game that's gonna feel smooth to play while also having the resolution of a 30. It's like 40 FPS is one of the more ingenious innovations for this generation of consoles because it's like finding that perfect middle ground for the people that have the tech to not quite sacrifice resolution while also having smoother performance. And through the naked eye, 40 to 60 FPS can sometimes be nigh on imperceptible as long as it's like locked. So I can't wait to see how that 40 FPS works for the people that have the tech for it. So it feels good to be a little bit more excited for Starfield because it's like I remember saying this around early time when I played it, is that the dream game for me has always been a space RPG, and for the most part, like through the majority of its runtime, Starfield gave me that. That's why like I was able to like really immerse myself in that game a lot compared to Fallout or Skyrim or Oblivion, that I try to like dedicate so much time to this game and then eventually I kind of like lose steam on them. Like I was telling my brother Sebastian, like I've been on a 2-year binder with Oblivion. Like when I heard that that game had a 4K 60 mode on console, I was like, I definitely want to play it. I never played Oblivion, and it's a game that I enjoy in the most parts, but it's like there's so much obtuseness to it that I'm like I can't quite stay fully engaged like I want to be. And I kind of wish I had experienced this when it was a magical moment back in 2006, because that's how I always known Oblivion as kind of like the game that a lot of people never thought they could get on a console. That these were the kinds of games that could only work on PCs with beefier hardware, and Oblivion will feel like a miracle. On top of then the extra miracles of Fallout and Skyrim. So obviously it's like we get such big games nowadays that's not quite as magical, but that was kind of like the legacy of Oblivion. That misses me because I've seen where games have gone since then, but I still definitely want to see it through, especially with some of the things that Sebastian told me where that story eventually goes, and I'm like, that actually does sound interesting, more interesting than I thought. So that's why I want to give. I still want to. I want to love Bethesda like I know a lot of people do. These games are really popular. Like Starfield, even with Game Pass, sold a lot. Fallout has been such a resounding like resurgence with the TV show, and everyone going back to both Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, and Fallout 76 finally recovering its stigma, like recovering from its launch stigma, especially now that IGN is going to do something like a re-review. It's kind of like at that point where they can re-review the game because it's just not the same as it was back in 2018, and even a few years after 2018, because that game took a long time for it to get better. But that's where it is, and a lot of people do love those games. And I know there's, even though Starfield's review reception is still a little bit, it's not the high watermark that their previous game is, like an 83 Metacritic, even though like that score was sunk by Jim Stephanie Sterling's 4 out of 10, because apparently they have such sway in Metacritic to just tank averages for the people that do care. A lot of people do like that game, even though it's like I feel like being put the weight of this has to be like Xbox's savior. This has to be their Zelda. This has to be kind of like the big IP for them, the game of the generation. I feel that those expectations are what ended up crushing what Starfield ended up being, which was another pretty good Bethesda RPG that just wasn't zeitgeisty enough. So, but they're still good in them that I feel like, especially in this era where games get better over time, I really hope that happens for Starfield. I'm rooting for it. Because it's like when I think of the two biggest disappointments that I had of that year, which were, to me, first party games of Starfield and Spider-Man 2, uh, I feel I have more fondness of wanting Starfield to erase that stigma versus Spider-Man 2. That I just, after New Game Plus made it pretty clear for me that I'm not gonna feel for that game how I would want to feel. Is like I feel there's more potential for Starfield, so rooting for it. So, and the final story before I move to some quick headlines: target launch months for Xbox 2024 games have seemingly been revealed. Also, a story by Tom Ivan. On Tuesday, Microsoft announced plans to hold its Xbox Games Showcase and Redacted Direct presentation on June 9th. According to The Verge, the Xbox Showcase will include an announcement of a new Gears of War game, while the second event will reveal the next Call of Duty, which is going to be the Treyarch Gulf War game, according to leaks. It was previously claimed that this year's Call of Duty is a new Black Ops game set in the early 1990s during the Gulf War. I got ahead of myself explaining that, with development being led by Treyarch. June's showcase will reportedly be used to announce release dates for Xbox's first-party lineup for the remainder of 2024. Bethesda is said to be targeting a September release for Starfield's Shattered Space expansion, which was recently given a fall launch window. Activision is reportedly planning a late October release date for Call of Duty, with About and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 likely to arrive in November and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle to follow in December. Activision Blizzard titles helped drive Microsoft's gaming division to record third quarter despite a significant decline in Xbox hardware sales. And then the information about like what Satya Nadella mentioned, then like meeting players where they are, blah blah blah. So it's like at the very least now what's so funny is that this early few months, especially after the surprise association of Palworld that Xbox had by having that on early access and kind of just by the fact associating themselves to one of the surprise hits early in the year that not many people talk about anymore, but who cares? It's like it had its limelight and it was so successful by itself that then like things went so damn quiet on the Xbox front all the way until May, until like one of their first party releases will come out, which is Hellblade 2. And then unfortunately that fan base having to live and have to swallow the whole is Xbox staying in business because they're gonna put stuff multi-platform and all that is like one thing that I always notice about Xbox is that they really, more than its competitors, love the fall. They absolutely love the fall. They love stacking the fall instead of trying to stack more games like throughout the year. They love shotgun blasting a bunch of their games, kind of like what happened in 2021 when they shotgun blasted Flight Simulator, Psychonauts 2, Forza Horizon 5, and Halo Infinite, and Age of Empires 4. And not to mention the PS5 release of Deathloop that's sort of attributed to them, even though that wasn't on Xbox, that was on PlayStation, but it's kind of like from the same family of publishing. That all happened like in that same period. That by the time all of this comes out, if all of these games are good and they hit the kind of like that full target, it's like a lot of people are gonna forget that calamity was like felt in the Xbox camp early this year with like a bunch of mixed messaging and them losing exclusives that they were kind of championing, especially with Hi-Fi Rush, which was kind of like their big surprise hit from last year. So by being put in a system that kind of game makes more sense. So now we know, we at least have an idea. It's funny that Indiana Jones is coming like in December. It's like this December kind of like the month where you want to just drop your whatchamacallit. Man, I'm having a brain fart. It's like is that the month where you want to put out your licensed games, kind of like Avatar last year over at Ubisoft? At least the Star Wars Outlaws is coming in August, so at least there's like there's like a 4-month period in between Lucasfilm properties. So, and I'm very excited for this Indiana Jones game. I love machine games, and I want to see what them sacrificing doing another Wolfenstein will look like in doing this game. So, and I want to see like I just want that Xbox Showcase to just fill out the rest of the year. That's the beauty of me owning all systems. Is like I feel like one of these three companies is always gonna like keep me fed no matter what, and I'm trusting Xbox more right now, especially with like PlayStation's more uncertainty of when they talk and what the hell they do. So now we know. Can't wait to hear them try to nail their batch of games for this year. If Hellblade 2 is not like an amazing game, which I hope it is. It's like I will really feel bad for them because like I hate for Xbox to just keep getting strays. They catch strays all the time. They always like everything they do is always caveated. I'm so sick and tired of Xbox always being caveated and not like enjoying like resounding success. Like it comes easy to the other two platforms. It used to come so easy for them, but it's like at a certain point, it's like are they just cursed to be like under a stigma based on the people that cover them, or is it really like the leadership team has been that's still there and remains there, given too much rope, and never put their feet to the fire when it's like they don't fully deliver, even though they put good stuff. So now we move forward to some quick headlines because there's quite a few. So and already like some of the stories already covered a few of those headlines. I'm deleting them a little bit. So stay kind of like in the Microsoft side because it's so weird considering them as part of Microsoft. Blizzard announces it's skipping BlizzCon this year. So obviously they always love doing BlizzCon like in late November. I think they always did it every year without stop, other than the pandemic where they had to stop it for obvious reasons in 2020. But after the last BlizzCon in 2023, kind of like was used to kind of like reinforce Blizzard's brands now that they had been acquired by Xbox. It's interesting that they're skipping BlizzCon this year, and I don't know how much that is because they really don't have anything to show, or they're part of more belt tightening happening over at Xbox now that they control all of this stuff, and Microsoft being like, is it worth our money having to do this big convention? Just to do it, because it's like now everything they do, it's in Microsoft's books, not Activision's books. So no BlizzCon this year. So sad for the people that love Blizzard stuff, but we'll see. Like around that time was when the expansion that they announced for Diablo 4 is gonna come out. So I want to see how that expansion fares and what the continued support is for Diablo 4, a game that I like, just don't love, but I accept that it has some fun qualities to it. Another headline: Hi-Fi Rush has been rated for Nintendo Switch in Europe. So everyone was surprised that when Hi-Fi Rush was announced to come, that was going multi-platform, only the PS5 version was the one that got revealed, dated, and released. And a lot of the rumors has been that the reason why that was happening was that that game is so dependent on running at a locked 60 frames per second because of its rhythm-based gameplay that the Nintendo Switch maybe was not powerful enough to be able to run that game at the desirable frame rate to hit the rhythm, the rhythm that game needs. But and people were like, yeah, maybe they're saving it for the Switch 2, a system more powerful that is going to handle that. It being rated for Europe tells me that they're actually going to release it on Nintendo Switch, and they probably just needed extra time to work on that game. Maybe do enough like compression to try to get that game running at the frame rate it needs to be like on Switch. Maybe like drop the resolution to such a severe degree that the art style may help carry it no matter what. So we'll see what happens. Hi-Fi Rush is such an excellent game, and I'm glad to hear that it was part of like the successful stuff that Microsoft found when they put it over on PlayStation, because that game is just at home there. It's just so interesting when after I said we're saying goodbye to Bethesda published stuff over on PS5 after Ghostwire Tokyo, which was a Tango Gameworks game. Sorry, that another Tango Gameworks game made it there. So Hi-Fi Rush deserves all the success, and I hope a sequel is not too far behind. It's such a cool game. Next headline: Stellar Blade has 2024's highest Metacritic user score so far. This is just so interesting because it's like that game has an 82 on Metacritic, but it has now a 93 in like user scores, which is like Metacritic obviously is like such a cesspool sometimes, especially when it comes to like the user reviews where so many people have like organized campaigns to tank user scores. Like what we saw, like I remember seeing people organizing to tank the Starfield review scores, to also to tank the God of War Ragnarok review scores, and even the Final Fantasy 16 review scores, just because they're exclusives. And like Metacritic is like, I hate Metacritic so much in that a lot of people put so much weight on the average that they come up after they gather all the scores, even though the way they gather all the scores is absolute bullshit, because they give extra weight to certain outlets to like manipulate a score than others, instead of just being like a legit, honest aggregation, which is why I prefer OpenCritic, even though the site is a little uglier. And obviously, full disclosure, Season Gaming is on OpenCritic, not on Metacritic, so it's like we're part of the average in that in OpenCritic. But at the very least, with OpenCritic, it's like no one gets special treatment, and the average is like a true average, so it's a little bit more objective way of like seeing like where the scores landed compared to Metacritic. And it doesn't enable the user score like nightmare that is Metacritic, that is so easily manipulated from people that score games just based on an agenda, or they even play based on some of the things they said. That it's clear they just reviewed based on an idea. And I just wish the industry wasn't so tied to Metacritic, especially because Metacritic refuses to also evolve. Like they don't want to do anything about the user scores, because who cares for them? Like for them, who cares? Because it's like a lot of people click in their site and they're making money with the people clicking there, and how they manipulate it, and also how they have not updated their kind of like their way of like adding reviews in this era where we have had a few games get re-reviews from some sites, like for example, like Poor Prey from Arcane, when IGN gave it a 4 out of 10 when that game broke for reviewer Dan Stapleton, and then a patch came in that then he updated his review score for an 8. Like the 4 out of 10 remained in the Metacritic forever, which is so disingenuous of what happened with that site, and also the Byzantine way Metacritic works. That's why like I use Metacritic just kind of like it's a barometer that's good to check there, but it's not one that I put all my eggs in the basket to say something, because especially how I've seen how things are weighed differently there, which is like so stupid. So, but in going back to Stellar Blade, it's like, are the high reviews because of that brigade of people that are like, oh yeah, this is a game that is like sticking it to the liberal woke people because it's like this so anti-woke, and it's like it feels like kind of like it's getting a lot of positivity out of the culture war that unfortunately surrounded Stellar Blade. But it's just so stupid. It's just like the culture wars are just so stupid. But just fun fact nonetheless about where Stellar Blade is. It's like 82. I feel that's the right place for that game, even though like I'm at a 7.5 currently. So other headline: new pulse and a new location are coming to Pal World this summer. Obviously, that game is kind of like making its way out of early access into like a full release. I wonder if this is part of the early access build-up of that game, or if this is kind of like what it's going to be there when the 1.0 launches for that game. Obviously, this was the game that burned bright and shine in January, and the surprise success of whatchamacallit, of Helldivers 2, which never hit the stratospheric peaks numbers of Palworld, but was like more consistent in its numbers like for a longer period of time. That now is like one of the best selling. It is the best selling game of the year, according to Circana and PD. That even with like relatively lesser numbers, like overall of whenever it is, like at least the averages of Helldivers 2 has been like higher than Palworld like in recent times. That game just kind of like really caught a zeitgeist. But I really want to see like if adding new locations and new pals like does to that game, because like it's so weird that that game was 4 months ago. So weird. Now another Starfield news that was here that didn't quite make it to the news round that I made, but it's still like a quick headline. Starfield console mod support is still coming, claims Todd Howard. That headline comes from the Kinda Funny interview that I mentioned earlier. Like he was saying that the mod support is kind of like in beta test with the Steam users, and that's kind of like something that they're trying to push as soon as they can. I wonder if they're saving it as a double punch for when the Shattered Space comes, and be like, oh yeah, here's the new expansion, and here's also mod support 2-in-1. We'll see. Like that would make it like a bigger splash whenever that releases in the fall. But I also wouldn't put it past them and be like, oh, now mod support is here for the summer. Toy around with it before Shattered Space. As like the mod support, the mod community for Starfield was so weird because like it burned bright early on, but a lot of like prominent modders said like we're leaving Starfield because we're not feeling like where this game is right now, and it feels like we're actually doing the work that should have been there at launch. There are a lot of people who are saying that about Starfield. So official console mod support that has the creation tool, the creation suite from Bethesda and all that will like at least rejuvenate that thing on the Xbox consoles. So sooner that comes in, the better. And then the final news is like over at Koei Tecmo, they mentioned that Rise of the Ronin's launch sales are surpassing Neo, according to the publisher. So obviously Neo, a very hard, very beloved, but also kind of niche Souls-like in the style of Team Ninja. Obviously, like its appeal definitely not as broad as one would think, especially because I would say like Neo games are absolutely much harder than Souls games also. So they're not as fun to me to play. But Rise of the Ronin was certainly more fun to play for me, and it doesn't surprise me Rise of the Ronin would be selling more than Neo, especially because a lot of that game will be so evocative of Ghost of Tsushima for the people that have been like missing Ghost of Tsushima and wonder where the sequel is for that game. And it's such a fun game to play. Obviously, like I mentioned, I dropped it right now because like I hit like a really hard spot and something distracted me. But I definitely intend to go back to it because there's a lot of fun stuff in Rise of the Ronin that I really like, and I'm glad that it's finally like sell success at a time where we sometimes hear like maybe something didn't sell as well as expected or things like that. I'll always be happy when I hear a developer like be happy about a game's moderate success, because it's like I hate that there's so many people that only like count like bajillion sellers as kind of as huge success, instead of like when we got like the news of like Ramblin' Fantasy reeling, they were happy for 1 million sold, or and like a Dragon Infinite Wealth selling 1 million its first month, and also Persona 3 Reload selling 1 million also. It's like, and they were like happy with that. It's like, yeah, it's 1 million units. Your expectations are right on the money. So it's like I always like champion that, because it's like it helps lower the ceiling of what success should be, because it's like I didn't even put it here in this news because it's to the present. Like Take-Two announced that they're closing the developers for Kerbal Space Program 2 and Rollerdrome. And Rollerdrome, one of like the indie darlings of 2022, highly reviewed, got like a BAFTA, I think won at the BAFTAs, and all of that. Is like, it didn't matter. Apparently they want to close it because Take-Two is such a greedy company. They need to make the gazillion money and keep the and keep the graph going up. So I will always like be happy seeing that, because like that's when I know like the industry is like not just 100% doom and gloom, and there can be a little bit of happiness to come from this. And finally, now we move over, now that quick headlines are done, to the release dates for the week of May 5th to May 11th. We got Prison Architect 2 launching on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on May 7th. We got Seed of Life coming to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch on May 7th. We got Via Rising, the PC version, coming on May 8th. The PS5 version of that game comes later this year. We got Animal Well coming on PlayStation 5, Switch, and PC on May 9th. We got Crowd Country coming to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on May 9th. And Little Kitty Big City coming to Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on May 9th. And that's also going to be on Game Pass. I saw it in the upcoming list. So my wallet rests easy this week. It's going to be resting easy all the way until May 21st, personally. So I might use this time to just finish Stellar Blade and maybe convince Paul to get Sandland, because even though that was one of the games that we definitely wanted to get, and then like the reviews came in slightly lower than we wanted. It was like a 72, so I was like, if we want to commit to one, let's commit to the one that reviewed slightly higher. And I'm like, maybe I should have committed to Sandland, because like I mentioned, I enjoy Stellar Blade, but I'm not 100% engaged with it. And I know Stellar Blade has not clicked with Paul. He's been playing other stuff, so maybe I can convince him, because Payday's coming soon. So, and I know Rick Hogue recommended me Saga Emerald Beyond today. Obviously Rick has a very interesting eclectic taste right now. Obviously he came in the lower side for Rebirth when almost everyone else came in the relatively high praise for that game. It's weird what works for him and what doesn't. So I take that with a grain of salt, but it's fun talking games with him. So he recommended me that, and I know there are demos there. I didn't download it, but I'm definitely gonna try it to see if it's something that I would like, because these are gonna be some empty weeks for new games for me. So, which I get to save money, no big deal for me. So we'll see what happens. And with that, we come to the conclusion for this week's edition of the X Button. You can find me at _Drosegovia on Twitter, and you can find me on Threads/Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93, and then you can find my written content over at seasongaming.com, my current written content and some of my older stuff over at my own website, thecriticalcorner.com. In Season Gaming, you can find my reviews for this year, which include The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, Skull and Bones, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy 16 Rising Tides DLC, and I forgot to mention it here because it didn't bear any, like, I had little to say and it was such a quick review to write for me. My review for TMNT Arcade Clash of the Mutants, I even forget what that means. It's like a TMNT game, the game you'll put out, I gave it a 5 out of 10. The game sucks. So, I only didn't give it lore because it was functional. It was, but it's like, I don't recommend that, especially for that price. You would be better served to play Shredder's Revenge or Kawabanga Collection, which similar games, and they're just done so much better than this arcade port. So you can read all of those reviews there at seasongaming.com. And if you enjoy what you listen or watch, give it a like, give us a subscribe, leave us a review on your audio services of your choice. Let us. We will love to hear always from you. Like, in the few times that happens, I'm glad that despite that, the numbers have just kept climbing. Like, we passed a recent milestone of in audio recently. I shared that to Paul. I was like, yeah, it finally happened. So it's like, I know the audience is still there. I just would love to hear more from you. Like, I'm open for feedback. And until then, we will see you next week, hopefully with Paul and Tao, as we're nearing the end of his term here, at least temporarily, because he'll be back when the kid has a few months in being alive. But then until then, it's like, we'll make do and enjoy the rest of what this month may or may not give us. Summer's around the corner. Maybe you can go outside, touch some grass. If not, play some games and press X to play. Hasta la vista, baby.